Welcome, everyone. I'm Brianna Rodriguez, editor-in-chief here at Backstage, and I have the distinct pleasure of being here today with Emmy nominee Matt Bomer, star of Fellow Travelers. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me, Brianna.
Yeah, I'm
Love
super
talking to you.
excited. Yeah. So you've been moving with Fellow Travelers for several years now.
Yeah, I think we're at 4 years now.
Yeah, it's a good chunk of time. You had a huge hand in, shepherding this alongside the show creator, Ron Nicewarner, bringing it to audiences. I'm curious, when the scripts first landed on your lap, what were some of your immediate green flags? Like, what's the lens that you use per se, to determine whether or not a script is going to work for you?
Well, it wasn't a script that first landed on my lap. I was lucky that 4 years ago in the middle of the pandemic, Robbie Rogers and Ron Nicewarner reached out to me and they passed the novel along to me, or
Mm,
they told me about it and I ordered it, one of the two, and I read it in about 2 days. But um, it was really unlike anything I'd ever seen before, and it was educating me, but not in like a preachy or proselytizing way. I was just learning about our history of our country, but also my community while I was reading it through the eyes of these characters and having a real lived experience of what it was like during the Lavender Scare. And then once I heard Ron's ideas to really broaden the world of the novel and bring in the Marcus and Frankie characters and go through their experience with them, and also carry it all the way through the 60s, 70s, and 80s, I thought, wow, this is a once in a lifetime opportunity.
And then so once you did, see that first script, what was that like for you? What was going through your head? What were you like, "Ooh, this is," when the words were on the page, the novel is such a different experience to
Yeah,
script.
yeah, and I'm a big, research nerd. So I had, all my dog-eared pages on my novel and my highlighted things that I would bring to Ron Nicewarner. And he's like, "Great, listen, I'm so glad you love it, but now my script, now you have to do all this with my script, not the book, because I have my own plan here." And yeah, honestly, it really, his first script really obliterated all of my cynicism that I had about the project. I was so, I mean, unbelievably overwhelmed that we even got the project sold and that we had these great executives behind it. But there was a part of me that was like, are they really going to commit what you have to commit to a multi-decade period gay romance? And they did. And I think a lot of that is because of Ron's writing. It just, for me, for Hawk, I'd never seen a gay anti-hero like that. I guess that's how you could, from an objective, it's hard for me to be objective about Hawk. I'm still kind of subjective about him, but I guess from an audience perspective, you could think of him like that. But I'd never seen a character who had so much shadow as much as light at the forefront of a story like this.
Mhm.
And if they were, it certainly wasn't a script that I ever even got the chance to read. So I was just like beyond grateful that I got to be a part of this. And I thought that what he found in the character of Tim, and how open he was to the world, and his conflict with his religion, and then
Mhm.
once he started to flesh out all the other characters, I thought, wow, and Lucy and Marcus and
Right.
Frankie, I thought, wow, this is a really special, unique, once in a career story
Yeah,
to be a
absolutely.
part of.
Yeah, I'm so glad that you brought up Hawk's shadow because in previous interviews, you've said that it's almost his, like, love and his openness and his vulnerability that acts more as the shadow, um, and so I'm interested in how that influenced sort of your decisions around how to play him, and then, of course, this is Backstage, so if you have any acting techniques that you did to employ in getting there, would love to hear them.
Well, this is one of those projects where I was really the beneficiary of having time. So I had 2 years with the material before we started filming it, which you're, I mean, as an actor, that's almost never happens. And so I got to let things kind of simmer on the back burner and marinate and kind of take inspiration from all different types of sources. Both obviously you do the period research, so you understand what's going on in the government at the time and their day-to-day life was like, all those things. But also even really abstract influences were hitting me. Like I remember I was at the beach one time and there was a guy who had a falcon on his arm, who was, the falcon's job was to keep the seagulls away. And I said, "Have you ever worked with a hawk?" And he said, "Yeah." And I said, "Well, what can you tell me about a hawk?" And he said, "Well, hawks are different than falcons. They fly above everything, and then when they see what they want or they see a place they want to go, they zoom down at it. And I thought, oh wow, that's so much of who this character is. Even though it's a very abstract reference, that was really informative for me. And then I worked with a movement coach so that I could kind of find my way and navigate the different ages and the different time periods, because so many of the days in the shoot we were jumping decades at a time in the same day, and sort of find the vocal changes, the body changes, all of that on top of the great work the hair and makeup and the costumes department did in helping us out as well. And then, I worked with an acting teacher on it as well. So I just got to like really break down the scenes before we even got started. And, you know, television is such a great medium to work in, but oftentimes it's very fast. And so you don't have a lot of time to actually sit and discuss a scene and work out the kinks, or find certain choices. But having done all that, the most liberating thing about this job was getting to work with Johnny, because what we really we're trying to do is not chase any kind of perfect take or have any pre-planned choices, but to really be kind of alive to the moment and what was actually happening in the scene, and trying to have the courage to let that be what the scene became, as opposed to something we were trying to impose upon it.
Yeah, it sounds like, I mean, flexibility within obviously the structure that you sort of built together is key. I mean, you talked a little bit about having to sort of span across these decades, and you're playing Hawk over so many years. And you've said that you had a ritual, different rituals depending on which decade you were playing.
Yeah.
And I would love to hear more about what those rituals look like, if you would be willing to share, how they changed across the decades to just sort of get you to slip into Hawk on the day.
Yeah, I mean, I won't go into too much detail, only because it is so subjective and kind of singular, and it's different for every job. But there's an extraordinary woman named Kim Gillingham who I do dream work with, and she does dream assignments, and you bring the dreams into your work and into the character. And so the the sort of ritual that we came up with, we did together, and like an exercise that I did with her one on one. And then basically it would change. The kind of core of who the character was the same throughout all 35 years, but decade to decade, certain aspects of the ritual would change. And that was based on where the character was in that point in his life, what he wanted at that point in his life, what his relationships were like at that point in his life. Was he leading more with his shadow or more with vulnerability? All those things played into each of those rituals, so that it wasn't just a physical change I was trying to make in each decade. It was also an emotional one, because the tricky thing about aging and middle age is it's not like you go from the full flush of youth to all of a sudden being bent over with a cane. It's very subtle physical gradation. So what was just as important to me, if not more, was how was he emotionally developing from decade to decade.
Would you say that you're more an emotional actor or a cerebral actor? And did that have to change for Hawk at all?
Um, well, I don't know. I guess I can be both. What I try to do is get a lot of the intellectual, just given circumstances, things out of the way very early on, so that then I can know those in my body, but then just go on emotion and intuition. And to me, that's, if I have the time to do that, that's the best of both worlds. Um, I think I was really lucky to work with Bradley Cooper and Carey Mulligan right before I did this on Maestro, and I watched them age through the decades and watched how they worked, and that they weren't chasing some perfect take, that they were really just open to whatever was happening right in that moment. And it's not like, I mean, there were scenes in Maestro, I think I did one take or two takes. And so it's not like we were just like throwing all the spaghetti at the wall. It's just like you just kind of went with what was coming through that day. And I was really grateful that I got that experience right before I started this, because I think it really informed how I approached the work in this as well. And yeah, I guess that is from a more emotional, intuitive place, but you have to also do all the intellectual work before that, is like kind of the groundwork for me.
Yeah. And you said you're really a research actor. You love research. So is there I mean, I know it's hard. You're spanning all of these very crucial decades, but I'm curious from your research if there was anything that really was a guiding light for you in any of the. I mean, let's stick with the Lavender Scare for that era. That really was a guiding light for you that came out of your research for Hawk.
Well, I think it's really an understanding, particularly in the 50s, but what the stakes were for him. It's estimated that around 10,000 people lost their jobs. Countless people committed suicide because not only were their private lives exposed to the world without their consent, they were also, their careers were ruined. Everything they'd gone to school for, everything they prepared for was gone. So a lot of the decisions that Hawk makes, he's a survivor. He's doing them in order to survive. And anything that threatens his survival or the survival of the people he loves, I mean, he's not afraid to make decisions that some of us from the lens of 2024 might find questionable, but were very understandable once you were living that subjectively. Um, yeah, I'm trying to think. Does that answer your question? What was?
Yeah, I mean, I think that you just outlined the stakes so
Yeah.
clearly.
And
Which
also building a backstory,
yeah,
I think, especially as you get older as an actor, you have more and more backstory that you have to build with each character.
yeah,
You have to build X amount of years, but it was really, I found it, and this is very actory, but this is the place to talk about it. When
place.
when I do backstory work, I try to make it, I really go on my imagination, and I try to make it a sensory experience as well, because I found that that lives in my body more if I know what I was smelling, what I was hearing, what I was seeing, what I was feeling when that was happening to me. Then I find that that stays in my body and my subconscious more when I'm playing the role than if I'm just like, oh, and I bet when he was 8, he, broke the neighbor's window when he hit a baseball through it, or what, you know what I mean? Whatever it is.
Yeah.
So really finding key lived experiences that connect to the central need or fear of the character through the course of their life.
Mm,
And obviously anything that's talked about in the script, I find that really, for me, like a more lived experience, so that when I'm playing it in the scene, I don't have to worry about playing at it. I can just trust that it lives in my body.
right. Yeah, I mean, I can't even imagine, what it must be like to have all of that information just sort of at your not at your fingertips, but kind of at your fingertips as you're going through this scene and these ideas of what this person was like when they were young and what they're bringing to the table now.
Or even the monologue where he's talking about losing his entire platoon and what happened to him, and
Right. Right.
it's a moment where the only way he can even talk to Skippy about it, he can't even look at him when he's telling
Right.
him about it.
Right.
And just doing all that work in the most kind of lived way that you can safely for
Mm.
everyone's individual psychology, but
Which is such
um,
a good point.
you just trust that to come through when you're playing.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think what also really stood out for me watching this show is, yes, what's said, that monologue that you just spoke about, but it's also so much about what isn't said and what is being said in the silences and the ways he sort of, where you're looking and all of that. And so bringing to the table all of those emotional stakes, that survival elements. Do you have any personal rules around playing things like subtext in the moment?
To me, that's the most, at this point, having done this for about almost 30 years now. I think that's the most fun aspect of a character for me, because I think we all present a certain aspect of ourselves to the world. I'm presenting a certain aspect of myself to you right now, which is a part of me, but isn't all of me. And there are things that I might be thinking or not saying when you're asking me a question or in between questions, or and you're doing the same. So I think those little moments kind of, the big question mark around that is always, well, like, are you going to work with a director who only keeps the camera on you when you're talking? You really got to hope you're with an editor and a director and a creator who knows the value of unspoken moments. And I was just so fortunate that in a project like this, they paid attention to those moments as much as they did to when the characters were actually speaking. But yeah, I enjoy those as much as an actor now. Behavior, what's not being said,
Mm.
as I do the actual lines at times.
Mm. Yeah, I wanna speak a little bit on the sort of director-actor relationship that you just brought up. There's this really lovely anecdote from director, Uta Breitzowitz, where she talks about your is it did I pronounce that right?
Breshwitz, Bryce Breshwitz, maybe?
Dershowitz. Just about your level of awareness as an actor and one that she noticed as a director, specifically about a love scene that you had with Allison Williams, who plays your wife on the show, where her hair was blocking her profile, and you subtly sort of pushed it so that her face wasn't being blocked. And Uda said how she so admired how you fixed the shot's composition while also really enhancing the mood and the vibe of the moment. Can you pull back the curtain a little bit on how you manage to stay so in the moment while also being really aware of the camera and what's happening on set?
Well, that's very nice of her to point out and say. I think it's, and I wish I had some big, lengthy explanation for it. I think it's more just kind of putting your focus on your scene partner as much as on yourself. And even if you're in a two shot, I don't know. That's something that when you first start on camera as an actor, the camera also can eat up you being really self involved too on a close up, But for me now, I love putting my focus on my partner and seeing as opposed to what's happening in me or what I am feeling, you know what I mean? And that, so I don't know, maybe it was just kind of an organic expression of that. And I've done, some intimacy scenes at this point, and I knew that her face was being blocked, and I also wanted to be loving. And I may have done that even if her face wasn't blocked, because it was a moment where Hawk was really trying to be loving and connected to Lucy. I also knew that what Allison was doing was beautiful and amazing, and I didn't want the take to be lost.
Right.
So I thought maybe I can help in that way. But all that's happening in, 1/100th of a second.
Yeah, right. And there's so many plates spinning and you're going, "Which one am I gonna pay attention to right now?"
Yeah.
I wanna talk a little bit about the intimacy scenes. I mean, every person, especially the cis gay men who I've talked to about this show, have commented and commended just how realistic the sex scenes are, from the physicality to the dynamics. I know you guys, you worked with intimacy coordinators, and Jonathan Bailey shared with us in his cover interview that you two spoke in depth at a little cafe that he thought was very aptly named in Toronto. It was
Gold struck coffee, yeah,
on Cumberland Street.
and Cumberland Street.
So he
Yes.
thought that that was a funny little, detail there, but,
Huh.
what advice do you have for other actors who are performing in intimate scenes who, might not have as much experience with them?
Oh gosh. I mean, it's so specific job to job, really, isn't it? I mean, we're so lucky as somebody who existed for years before we even had intimacy coaches. I'm so grateful that we have them now. I mean, it's so nice to be able to have someone who can be an intermediary and tell you parts of your scene partner's body what that are too sensitive to be touched, or where they don't want to be touched, or that might be triggering for them or upsetting for them. And it's also nice just to have somebody there who might have deodorant or a breath mint if you need either one of those things. But yeah, a lot of it was that pact Johnny and I made because we knew we were going to be working with different directors over the course of filming, and um, we knew that we had to have each other's back. We had to, that we were going to be responsible ultimately, um, even though we had writers and directors there, for keeping the through line alive throughout it all. And so we worked with great intimacy coordinators, but we also would sidebar and have our own discussions. And I was always open to Johnny's thoughts about what if we tried this and what if you did this. And we were trying to, we were lucky in that these intimacy scenes were really integral to the story because the characters were never the same after an intimacy scene as they were before. And they were this sort of like therapeutic interaction they had with each other where they were able to, through their sexual connection, express their relationship to the societal oppression they were experiencing. Hawk by raging against it, and I think Tim by just being more open and vulnerable to it all. I don't want to speak on behalf of Johnny, but that's what I was witnessing in the scene when I was with him, and so we were always trying to find ways to bring out the story within the scene. And I think because of that, it was the first time that I found myself really comfortable being working moment to moment in an intimacy scene and not being afraid to just try something in the moment as opposed to just having everything okay 5 6 7 8 and then we do this and then your hand goes here and then like it wasn't mathematical in that way, it was all really organic.
That must have been such a beautifully freeing feeling, to be able to move moment to moment like that.
Yeah, it was probably the most in my body I've been able to be in intimacy scenes because
Mhm.
sometimes you can just dissociate. And
Right,
that doesn't it has nothing to do with like if I'm playing a gay character or a straight character. I've been really present in a moment when I've been in a scene with a woman. I've been really
right.
dissociated when I've been with a scene with a man. So it just really depends kind of character to character. I'm just so grateful that I had a scene partner and an environment on set where I felt comfortable enough to be able to work like that.
Yeah, amazing. I want to shift gears a little bit and talk about what feels a little bit like an inflection point in your career, and that this is your first time taking on the role of executive producer. I know that you produced on White Collar as well, but you were a straight up actor on TV for decades at this point, and stepping into that role, was there anything from, previous experiences, that you definitely wanted to just throw out the window and were like, "That's not happening here because I can do that now."
Yeah. I mean, it wasn't like I was gonna take that title and then suddenly be draconian about it all. Like to me, what you do as an executive producer can really change in capacity, job to job. For me, it was mostly about bringing relationships that I had into the project in whatever way that I could. I mean, Dan Minahan, who was so integral to this show and establishing the tone of the show and the look of the show. Simon Dennis, our director of photography. I mean, Dan is on my DGA card. I studied under him for months, and I knew he was the perfect person to direct this. And I'm never, I don't like to be the person who says, yes, cast this person, or no, don't cast that person. But I do show up and do all the chemistry reads and those things and try to give every actor the absolute best I can. And if I know of anybody or any actor's work, that's something that I'll try to bring to the table as well. But and then thankfully during filming they were very nice about like setting healthy boundaries for me where I didn't have to weigh in on every single thing during filming, and then I got a break until post production and then the sort of marketing and release of the show.
Was there anything, having now been an executive producer, that you are going to take into your next role as just like a straight actor, where you're just like, "Oh, I didn't realize that that happened that way," and so now
Uh-huh.
now it's informing me as I show up as an actor.
Well, I think, and this comes from directing as well. You just have a much more holistic sense of how everything gets made. It's a real peek behind the curtain and what happens when, actors. We have to shelter our actors because what we're asking of them is tremendously vulnerable, and it's the magic of what we capture in them that's going to live on screen. But there are also so many things that happen when they go and sit in their trailer or on their cast chair before they're cast or after their final cut is turned in. And so um I think it will probably vary project to project. We were just so lucky on this one in particular that we had executives who didn't, oftentimes the notes you get from executives are sort of pull this back. No, this doesn't fit into the demographic we want to hit. And what about these folks at Showtime and Paramount Plus were like, no, go farther. How far can you go? Push into that. Go into that uncomfortable place and then go farther. So far that you think we're going to say no. And I think that's the greatest license you could ever hope for with any kind of creative team. And it bled into the work because then it actually, in the work, all those moments of vulnerability or awkwardness where you leave a take like kind of hot and you feel ugly and the camera crew is looking at you like you're crazy, and those are the moments you ended up kind of trying to push yourself into as opposed to avoid it.
That's amazing. I mean, it paid off that they pushed us, they said, "Go further,"
Yeah.
because it's such a beautiful, result. I'm curious if you could give Hawk one piece of advice, what would it be?
Oh, well, what point in his life? Like when he's in his like
I
30s or his 60s.
Right. I guess, I mean, where he ends up, you can see the whole trajectory. And so, at the in that final scene, you know where he ends up as Matt. What is there any advice that you would be able to impart?
I think Ron Nicewarner said it all, honestly. I think he kind of dropped the mic. And I remember after filming that final scene, I still had a week left to go, but it was so hard to rally myself to go back because I felt like I had really closed the book on the character.
Mm,
It's so heartbreaking, but also so moving and profound that this is a man who's just starting to lead his most authentic life at 65. Thank God he still has his daughter by his side.
right,
I heard he still had his daughter. I got emotional just like immediately because I was like, thank God he just has somebody who
right,
loves him unconditionally, who he can move into the next chapter of his life with, whatever that may be.
right. Yeah, there's some real gut-wrenching moments in this show, that as a viewer or I'm very grateful for. It's amazing to have a show that can make you feel as deeply as fellow travelers. So,
I'm grateful we got to make it. I'm grateful we live in a world where it can exist. I'm grateful we got to make it the way we did. I'm just still thanking my lucky stars.
yeah. Well, thank you so much for the time today, Matt. Congratulations again on the Emmy noms and great work.
Thank you, Brianna. I appreciate it. Always great talking to you.
Thank you so much.